Pennsylvania Ancestors Podcast. This is Denise Allen, and in this week's episode, I chat with author, historian, storyteller, and story collector Charlie Adams, trustee of the Berks History Center here in Pennsylvania. He has spent decades collecting local stories, and I hope it inspires you to find the stories in the counties where your ancestors lived. And now, here's Charlie. Charlie Adams, welcome to the podcast. You are, I think, a local celebrity here in Berks County, and you're a trustee of the Berks History Center. I'd love for you to share with the listeners about yourself and your depth of experience researching history and the stories here in Berks County.
Depth with a P. I thought you said depth of experience. Yeah, I'm probably the coolest guy you'll ever meet in your life. I was in radio for 35 years in WEU, did a morning radio show, and written about 35 books on ghost stories, train wrecks, shipwrecks, baseball, whatever. I'm a travel writer for 40 years, writing about 4,000 travel stories, and I like to travel extensively. Put that past tense, we're doing this during this virus thing. I love people, I love life, and I love Berks County and the rich heritage here, and I was really honored to be asked to be a part of this.
So how did you learn about Berks County to the depth that you have? You have a really deep knowledge.
I don't know where that quest came from, but I do know that when I grew up, my mother was from Hamburg, and she was a as Dutch as it gets. And my grandma spoke Pennsylvania Dutch, and everything was all Dutchified. I grew up believing I was Pennsylvania Dutch, Pennsylvania German. My mother's maiden name was Williamson. That ain't exactly Himmelberger or, Hinterschitz. They had Stewarts in their family. They ain't exactly Bubbenweyers, And my father's name was Adam. And as it turns out, I started doing sort of self-research on my own family heritage and discovered that, yes, they were Scottish, Irish, English, German, et cetera, et cetera. So they came from those places into this melting pot and melted so well that they almost diluted into, different identities. And I found that fascinating. But I realized that this was all a wonderful place, this Berks County, this Reading, where people came from, it sounds almost like a, Dan Fogelberg story song, but they came from all over here because it was almost a sanctuary city then, different definition of today's sanctuary cities. But they came on the boats to Philadelphia, they being from Holland, Germany, England, Wales, Scotland, Scandinavia, into Philadelphia. And then trying to escape the teeming streets of Philadelphia, they came up the line, up the river, and settled farther up, such as the Boones of Scottish and English, and the Lincolns. And those are the names, the buzz names that you are familiar with. But also the Himmelreichs and the Adamses and the Williamsons and et cetera, et cetera. So I saw this, and I saw in reading and hearing from relatives and smart people how they came also from New York, that they wanted to get as far away from New York as they could, as quickly as they could, and found this place, this haven. A lot of it was religious, as we know, the Penns, with their religious freedoms. But also, I discovered early on in my life, I was a boring child. I mean, I wasn't, everybody else out having a good time. I'm learning more about the Mennonite of northwestern Berks County, But I discovered that the first Mennonites, the first Amish in North America, were here in Berks County. And as I grew older and more appreciative of it all, and found out about places like the Historical Society, now the History Center, I started to get involved. And since I got out of the Navy back in 1968, I guess it was, I've been deeply involved in history. But even that, I was interested in a Navy ship called USS Reading. The first story I ever wrote for the Historical Review, which I'm now editor of, was a story about the USS Reading a frigate that was named after the city of Reading, Pennsylvania, and served in the United States Navy in World War II. And so I've been trying to link real life, my family's real lives, and the lives of all around me with this wonderful history of Berks County. And it's unique in so many ways because again, being a travel writer, I get to obviously travel, and they all have their history, their heritage, but we've got something very special here in Berks County. And it's reflected in things that you're doing right now and other organizations that are doing just marvelous work in genealogy.
I want to highlight something that you said about people here and how they were influenced by new immigrants coming in and their food and habits. We always think of new immigrants adapting to where they go, but the adapting really goes both ways. And people in one area can really change over a period of 50 or even 20 years.
And that's why the more you study all of this, the more you realize that it, like you say, it just continues to go on. I mean, what are we going to have tonight, Italian or Mexican?
Exactly.
When I was 12 years old, my mother would never say, let's have Mexican food tonight. Are you kidding me? That didn't happen.
Right.
But it was easy for them to have a recipe from a neighbor who came over from Hungary. And all of a sudden, I was introduced as a 12-year-old to a word, goulash. What is goulash?
That was my home too growing up. I want to ask you about research. You've written over 35 books, and many of those are just not on Berks County. You've written on Luzerne County, Montgomery County, and other places around the state. How do you go about learning those stories and the histories of those places? What steps did you take?
Well, I did a lot of it early on without the benefit of the internet, really. I mean, there was a time, an era, there was a land before the internet. When you had to do like grunt work, go to libraries. And I still go to libraries, but I had to go to libraries. There was no such thing as sitting in my room, just, going online to a library and ferreting out everything I needed. And also, even if there is, I mean, I still write stories all the time, travel and or folklore or whatever. But I don't sit in I'm not content enough to just sit here and do that. I will not allow myself to do that. I want to get out. I go to these places, and my business partner and friend, Dave Seibold, who he does a lot of the grunt work. He does a lot of all the marketing for the books and things. He's also a very good friend. He and I would go to these places, and we kind of spread out. He had one mission. His mission was to find out where we can sell books, if it's worth doing a book in a particular area. Mine was getting in and slapping hands and meeting people and finding out who knows what and where I should go to find those things out. And that's often done by going to the place with the best hot dogs in town. I'm writing a book on ghost stories. Right, you got to go Fred Fredericks up there in the hill. He's got a place, And I'm writing a book on train wrecks. Oh, well, I know the fellow who runs the Railroad Museum up in Scranton. You start to person to person, people to people, eyeball to paper. People send me stories for the Historical Review, which I'm editor of, the quarterly journal for the History Center. And I've seen stories that quote one source, and I realize what they're doing. They're just using that one source that's available readily on the internet, and they haven't gone to the other sources that are you got to do some work to find them. And so I scold them about that. I've done it recently. And not that I'm a highbrow and I'm above you and you should do what I say because I'm a scholar and you're not. I'm not a scholar. But I'm just saying, please go beyond what you're doing now and your work will benefit from it. For example, when I did the book on Luzerne and Lackawanna counties, I went to Cooper's up in Scranton. That's one of those restaurants that everybody goes to, And I started asking people there and they said, I don't know, but my Uncle Fred knows. Here's his address. Talk to Fred. Well, I have this information, but you ought to talk to Billy down the road here. He's got some fantastic. So not only you're gathering your information, you're getting to know the people, and you're getting to know, invariably some gossip will come in. Yeah, I know that story up in Pittston, for example. The great story in Pittston, a haunted house in West Pittston, Pennsylvania. It's legendary. I think they made a movie about it. But you go up there and ask. I never forget this. I went to I think it was a bar. I said, I'm doing research. for a ghost story. Now, the house in West Pittston, exactly where is that? He says, you don't want to go there. Those people are wackos. Okay, all right. Do I dismiss that, or how do I deal with? But now I'm starting to get in with the people. I'll tell you who to contact. You contact this guy down the road. I'll I'll let him give him your phone number, and you network. You build a community almost.
Mhm.
And write about it. And it's just, I love doing that kind of research. As you're talking about genealogy, the same thing there. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You've got
Mhm.
to get down and dirty with real people. That happens all the time. I just posted on my Facebook page a page from a 1958 phone book just to show the Burnville phone numbers, which were letters and numbers like GR-8-V. That was a
Mhm.
phone. And the page I reproduced was the one with the Gruber Wagon Works on it. I got 3 responses. Oh, I can see in the middle of the page, that's my aunt, Dorothy, whatever her name might have been. I can't believe I didn't know that was her phone number. I never knew any of this. This is fantastic. Another one I got. Could you go to the page with the Haldemans on it or something like that, and see what their phone number was? Like an operator, but I'll do it because there are people, eyes opened up when they saw that. My gosh, this is cool. And now all of a sudden they're introduced to a world in which phone books existed. I'm more than happy to help out, get that, oh my gosh moment.
If people want to do research at the Berks History Center Library, do you recommend that they submit a research request, or should they try to make the trip once we get out of the pandemic here?
I recommend they make the trip because there again, I've seen it. I've been at the Janssen Library when our research assistants have dealt with someone. And if there are 4 people doing research at the library sitting around, we most of the times we know each other, the regulars there. The bar, it's like being at a bar, but
Mhm.
we're in a library. The regulars are bellied up to the bar, and some stranger will come in town, anything about anybody named Jones? William Jones, he was my great uncle. Yeah. All of a sudden they get that personal touch. And then the research assistants, the researchers, will find the books, will do the grunt work, and they'll get the documentation. But they'll also, maybe that person who knew Mr. Jones will say, yeah, give me a call or shoot me an email. I think I have something more I can help you with. So yes, come to the library. But there again, a lot of this information is available online, but it's tough because a lot of it still has to be retrieved. I mean, there are millions of pages of information. And we, the Historical Society, the History Center, or the Smithsonian, or the Library of Congress can't digitize everything. So you still must go to the Library of Congress. You still must go to the Free
Mhm.
Library of Philadelphia, the archives in Pennsylvania, in Harrisburg, and the Berks History Center, Janssen Library.
The Berks History Center has been around for 150 years, collecting and sharing historical material. What does the future look like for the Berks History Center for the next 150 or maybe even just 5 years?
As many such historical / cultural institutions, it faces challenges,
Mhm.
financial challenges, membership challenges. A lot of people have shunted aside their belief, at least, for a need to support local organizations such as this. So there are those challenges, but they're being met by forward-looking leadership and trustees. I hope we are, but we are looking for endowments and mainly membership. Join and find out the wonders of being a member. Discounts on trips, and I don't want to sound like I'm giving a commercial here, but darn it, I will anyway. But you get discount trips, you get first grabs at certain programs, you get all kinds of other little benefits. Get to use a library, research center for nothing, on and on and on. So I think membership first and foremost is something that has to be addressed.
And the membership support from all over the country really allows the Historical Society to maintain the records of people's ancestors and preserve them for future generations. Can you tell us about the Historical Review of Berks County?
The Historical Review of Berks County is a quarterly that's put out uh, by the Berks History Center. It's one of the finest of its type in the country, really. Um, it's been published since 1935, and it's one of the real substantial benefits of being a member of the Berks History Center. You'll get surprises too. I've gotten several times over the last year or so. Members have read a story in the review and said, "I never knew that. That was so cool." What the writer story wrote, whatever he or she wrote. So that's the other thing you'll get. It's almost like, well, it is I call it a history, kind of an ongoing history book. It's like 48 to 60 some pages every 3 months. So at the end of the year, you got a nice little tidy history book. And also, if you navigate through that, berkshistory.org, you'll find searchable stuff. Like you can search databases, you can search the photos, you can search stories that have been published in the review since 1935 or whatever. So there's a wealth of information right on that online. And once things are up and running again, of course, coming in and actually doing the research and talking to people, as we said before, we'll start again.
Charlie Adams, thank you so much for being on the podcast. This was a real treat for me. You're a local legend, and it was a real honor to talk with you about Berks history.
Thanks very much.
I want to thank Charlie once again for sharing what the Berks History Center has to offer. In the show notes to this episode are links for contacting them and doing research through them. Remember that each county in Pennsylvania has its own historical society, so if your ancestors weren't from Berks, that's okay. There's an equally wonderful keeper of stories and records for your county. Thank you for listening, and remember, if there's something you'd like to hear on a future episode, you can drop me a line at paancestors.com. I hope you and your family continue to stay safe and healthy.